There are voices that speak from the mountaintop, loud, righteous, thunderous. And there are voices that rise from the river, slow, winding, full of secrets. Mark Twain was the latter. He wasn't just a writer, he was a current, a bend, a tide in the story of America. He was born as Samuel Langhorne Clemens, but we came to know him as Twain, a name borrowed from riverboat slang, meaning safe water, 2 fathoms deep, a name that promised passage and often delivered revelation. His life was one of contradictions. A southern boy who hated slavery, a joker who wept privately, a man of enormous fame who died beneath the weight of his own sorrows. And yet, across the sweep of the 19th century, from frontier towns to royal courts, he captured the soul of a changing nation with the stroke of a pen and the roll of a story. This is not merely a life story, it is a journey into the muddy, musical, and mythic waters of Mark Twain's America. He was born in the village of Florida, Missouri. So small, it could barely claim the title of town. November 30, 1835. The world barely noticed. But above, the heavens burned. Halley's comet returned, lightened the night. Twain would later say, "I came in with the comet. I expect to go out with it." And he did. His father, John Marshall Clemens, was a dreamer and a judge. Stoic, driven, often defeated by money and misfortune. His mother, Jane Lambton Clemens, was warm and humorous, full of storytelling and spiritual fervor. From her, Sam inherited a love of performance and contradiction. From his father, perhaps the awareness of the world's cruelty. Florida was a rough country. Wolves howled in the night. There were more tree stumps than school books. But the stories were there. In the air, in the thunder, in the town drunks, in the tales passed around the fire. A boy like Sam listened. He remembered. When Sam was 4, the family moved to Hannibal, Missouri. To a child, it was a paradise, a canvas of mischief, mystery, and imagination. Frogs leapt from mud puddles. Crickets sang on the windows. The Mississippi whispered its ancient song. But Hannibal was also a place divided by race, wealth, and silence. Sam grew up surrounded by slavery, and though he was too young to fully name the horror, he remembered the lash, the tears, the broken dignity of people who lived under chains. Later, he would write of it not with moral distance, but with rage disguised as satire. Jim, the runaway slave in Huckleberry Finn, was no symbol, he was memory. In Hannibal, Sam met the boys who would become Huck and Tom. The first painting mischief wasn't fiction, it was recollection. The caves, the gang hideout, the Sunday sermons, he stored it all like treasure. Hannibal wasn't just a hometown, it was a proven ground for the American soul. At 11, Sam's world fell apart. His father died of pneumonia, a failed dreamer felled by illness and ambition. With no money for higher learning, Sam dropped out of school. But if the door to formal education slammed shut, he found another path. Words. He became a printer's apprentice. He cleaned floors, set type, and fell in love with language. Every mistake in print was a small tragedy. every phrase that worked, a small triumph. He read everything: Shakespeare, Arabian Nights, Dickens. He read the Bible for style, not salvation. Books became companions. Silence became vocabulary. The boy was becoming a writer, not by guidance, but by necessity. Through his teenage years, Sam worked as a printer in St. Louis, Cincinnati, and New York. Each town gave him characters, dialects, contradictions. He watched how people spoke, lied, drank, prayed, and he stored it all. He was not yet a writer, but already a thief of human truth. He learned how to mimic voice, how to twist a sentence, and how to land a punchline. These were years of drifting, of curiosity, years when the boy who couldn't finish school became a one-man university. The Mississippi was not just a river, it was a god, a twisting deity of fog and current and fatal depth. At 21, Sam Clemens bowed before it and became its disciple. He apprenticed as a riverboat pilot, memorizing every bend, every snag, every whisper in the current. 2,000 miles of water burned into his brain. To be a pilot then was to be part poet, part mathematician, part prophet. You had to read the river the way others read scripture, interpreting its mood, second-guessing its deception. And Sam loved it. For the first time, he had a craft, a calling. From 1857 to 1861, he lived on the river. He watched cotton bales and enslaved bodies pass on the moonlight. He heard gossip in port towns, saw the shifting politics of a nation on the brink, and he learned the rhythms of language, the way a sentence could rise and fall like a wave. He would later say, "The river taught me to write." And when he chose a pen name, he reached back to its depths. Mark Twain, 2 fathoms, safe passage. In 1861, war tore the nation apart, and the riverboat stopped running. Sam, now jobless, found himself adrift once more. He flirted with war, briefly joining a ragged Confederate militia. But he was no soldier, no killer. Within 2 weeks, he deserted. "The first time I heard a gun fired," he wrote, "I retired with honors from the field." He fled west, leaving behind war, duty, and guilt. He would later satirize this flight with typical Twain charm. But beneath the jokes was a clear moral instinct. He wanted no part in killing for a cause he didn't believe in. That decision would shape him. He'd spend the rest of his life skewering nationalism, hypocrisy, and the fog of war with brutal clarity. Twain didn't fight in the Civil War, but he became one of its sharpest chroniclers. He arrived in the Nevada Territory with dreams of silver and gold. He mined, he failed, he gambled, he failed again. But in the failures, he listened to the dialects, to the drunk, to the busted prospectors, telling tall tales by firelight. He began sending humorous letters to newspapers under his new name, Mark Twain. He mocked everything: land barons, moral crusaders, himself. In Virginia City, he worked for the Territorial Enterprise, refining his voice into something unmistakable. Wry, irrelevant, biting, but always deeply human. In 1865, he published the celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, a small story about a con man and a frog. It went viral in the 19th century sense. Overnight, he was famous. The West didn't give him gold, it gave him a voice. By the late 1860s, Mark Twain had arrived, not just as a writer, but as a performer, a personality, a one-man spectacle. He gave lectures across the country, dazzling audiences with his dry delivery and deadly timing. He was the first American author to become a modern celebrity, known not just for what he wrote, but for how he said it. He toured Europe and the Holy Land, chronicling his misadventures in the innocents abroad. He travelogue that mocked tourists, sacred relics, and even himself. It sold over 70,000 copies. America laughed, Europe winced, and Twain cashed his first major check. Mark Twain was no longer a name, it was a brand. He became one of the highest paid speakers in America. His wit was currency, his sarcasm, art. But with fame came discomfort. Twain hated pretense, and yet, night after night, he performed for those who embodied it. He mocked them even as he entertained them. A man is never more truthful, he wrote, than when he acknowledges himself a liar. He bought a mansion in Hartford, Connecticut. He married Olivia Langdon, a refined, intelligent woman from a wealthy abolitionist family. She tempered him. He sharpened her. They built a life, a home, a sanctuary. It was during these years he wrote the books that would become his legacy. Hartford was a golden chapter. The house rang with children's laughter and clattering keys from Twain's typewriter. Here he wrote the adventures of Tom Sawyer, Life on the Mississippi, and The Prince and the Pauper. Livy edited his drafts. She cut through his wildness, refined his chaos. She was his conscience on the page. Together, they navigated tragedy. One child died in infancy, others fell ill. But they built a family grounded in love, and books, and mischief. Twain was now America's most beloved author. He smoked cigars like other men breathed. He cursed fluently, wrote furiously, and made the nation laugh at itself. In 1885, Twain published what would become his masterpiece, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It took him 7 years. He struggled with the ending, with the weight of truth it carried, because beneath its jokes and boyish exploits was a ferocious attack on slavery, hypocrisy, and moral cowardice. Huck chooses damnation over betraying Jim. Twain had written a parable of the human heart in revolt against injustice. Some called it dangerous, others vulgar. But Hemingway would later write, all modern American literature comes from that one book by Mark Twain. It wasn't just satire. It was scripture for a nation trying to find its soul. Twain had seen slavery firsthand, not from a textbook, but from the streets of Hannibal. He had watched men bought and sold. He heard their screams as a child. He didn't understand. As a man, he couldn't forget. In his writings, he waged a war against the myths of the Old South. He skewered white complacency, mocked Confederate nostalgia. Twain knew satire was his weapon, and he used it with precision. The only reason God made man, he wrote, is because he was disappointed in the monkey. Twain's laughter was never safe. It came with a bite. In the 1890s, financial ruin struck. Bad investments drained his fortune. To repay his debts, Twain embarked on a grueling world lecture tour. He was nearly 60, exhausted, grieving. But the showman in him endured. He performed in 19 countries, from South Africa to Australia, India to Norway. He carried American wit across the globe. He met emperors and beggars. He smoked cigars in Turkish palaces and criticized missionaries in China. The world listened and laughed. By the end, he earned back every cent. Grief began to stalk Mark Twain. In 1896, his daughter Susie, brilliant, sensitive, died of spinal meningitis while Twain was overseas. He collapsed when he heard the news. Years later, his wife Olivia, his beloved Livy, grew frail, consumed by illness. He nursed her, prayed for her, begged for one more day. She died in 1904. Wheresoever she was, there was Eden, he wrote. His world cracked. The house in Hartford, once alive with music and mischief, was silent. He never lived in it again. Grief didn't just enter his life, it entered his prose. His satire turned darker, his vision more cynical. The boy who once ran through Hannibal's heels was now a broken man, wandering through the shadows of memory. From 1905 onward, Twain wrote not just to amuse, but to unravel. His stories turned inward, filled with death, betrayal, doubt. He wrote The Mysterious Stranger, a tale of Satan disguised as a child, revealing the cruelty of man. He wrote essays on war, greed, imperialism, denouncing King Leopold's Congo atrocities and the Philippine-American War. I have no race prejudices, he wrote, but I am strongly in favor of common sense, honesty, and fair play. His vision of America, once filled with wonder, now throbbed with irony. His laughter had teeth, and behind every joke, a wound. The public still adored him, but he had begun to withdraw into memory, into mourning, into the shadowy corners of his mind. In his final decade, Twain wrapped himself in white like a ghost performing in daylight. He became a national monument. Universities gave him honorary degrees. Reporters followed him like disciples. He wore the white suit everywhere, on stage, on trains, even at funerals. It's my protest against the tyranny of black, he joked. But beneath the jest, it was a uniform of defiance. He was preparing for death, but on his own terms. He published Autobiography of Mark Twain, a sprawling, chaotic masterpiece of memory, written to be released only after his death. Truth is the most valuable thing we have, he said. So, let us economize it. Even in old age, he refused to be tamed. In 1909, he lost another daughter, Jane, on Christmas Eve. She died in the bathtub, her heart stilled by an epileptic seizure. It broke what little remained of him. I came in with Halley's Comet, he had once said, and I expect to go out with it too. That comet, last seen in 1835, was returning. In April 1910, Twain's breath slowed. His heart, burdened by decades of love and loss, stilled. He died on April 21, 1910. The comet passed the next day. Mark Twain lived exactly as long as a comet's journey. The boy from Hannibal who had slept under the stars, the satirist who made emperors squirm, the cynic who never stopped believing in human possibility, was gone. Mark Twain was not just an author, he was America's mirror. He captured its language, its contradictions, its broken dreams and boyish wonder. He dared to write vernacular before it was respectable. He gave us characters who disobeyed, who questioned, who left home to find themselves on rivers and roads and rafts. Huckleberry Finn remains banned in some schools. Too raw, too real, too dangerous. That's how Twain would have wanted it. He knew that books weren't meant to comfort. They were meant to provoke, to challenge, to endure, and to endure, he did. Today, the Mississippi still flows past Hannibal, and somewhere out there, a kid still dreams of running away on a raft. He once said, "When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years." That was Twain, forever twisting expectation, revealing truth through irony. He taught us that humor is a scalpel, not a bandage. That memory is both a home and a battlefield. That we are all, in some way, boys on a raft, searching for freedom down a river we don't yet understand. Mark Twain did not just capture American life, he shaped its conscience. And as long as language lives, as long as satire bites, as long as rivers roll, Mark Twain writes with us still.